it's Mark from Ripple Training. So last fall when mPuppet first came out, I did a little demo of how to use it in Final Cut Pro 10 by shooting myself jumping up in front of a wall and cutting it out of Photoshop and comping it in Final Cut and doing sort of a silly little example of what you could do with it. And I've been wanting to show you how you can take mPuppet and use it in motion where you have access to all of the keyframe data as well as the ability to work in 3D space. So rather than show you myself, I thought I'd show you some work from George Edmondson from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who I found on Facebook, and he's been doing some great work with mPuppet in motion for a documentary he's working on. So instead of me talking about it, I thought I'd have him show us a little bit about what he's doing.
We are working on a documentary right now for the state of Alabama for our bicentennial celebration that is coming up. And in this project, we're going through different moments in history of the state. And they provided us with a ton of archival photos. You know, these are photos back from as long as photography has been around. So we've been going in and trying to bring these photos to life for this documentary, and mPuppet came out right in the middle of this project, and I'm both happy and sad. I'm happy because I'm using it on nearly every photo animation. Sad because I wish it would have been out sooner so that I wouldn't have to go back and redo all those photos.
Redo all the work, right?
Yeah, but it's just one of those things that it has helped so much with bringing these photos to life for people in a dynamic way. This is going to be kind of the final look. It's nice and subtle, but this is two, well, one is a farmer, one is a banker, and they are actually looking at the first crop of peanuts. And what I'm going for, the farmer is looking up at the banker saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it worked." So because that banker invested a lot of money into this farmer, all based on just pure faith and just basically hoping that their plan would work with these peanuts. So that's kind of the emotion that I'm going for there. But that's the final video. So that's where we're going. So this is the original photo that they gave me. It is a whopping 640 by 422.
Wow,
So
that's it. That's the highest resolution they gave you.
That's it. I didn't have a lot of pixels to work with here. This is the photo right here. And so what I did, I actually used a program called Pixelmator, and I went in and I cut out the banker, I cut out the farmer, and then obviously that left holes that I had to replace. And so I used the heal tool, some cropping, cutting, and pasting, and I filled in the holes that were left behind by the farmer and by the banker here so that I would essentially have a photo of just an empty peanut field with all the same light and all the same look that I wanted. I exported that as a Photoshop file, as a PSD. Then I brought it into Motion, and you will see what we have here. And that's where the fun began. So I'm going to switch over to perspective so you can kind of see what I went for. I took that background photo, I kind of duplicated it a few times because, again, I didn't have a ton of pixels I was working with, but that really opened up that field, and I set it down on I rotated that on the y-axis there. Am I saying that right? Is that the y-axis?
No, you rotated on the x-axis if you tilted it down.
Yes, that's it. And so I rotated that down on the x-axis, not, obviously not at a full 90 degrees because we want to be able to see it, because after all, this is, it's still a 2D flat image. But that just kind of gives you an idea of how we have that camera move, and it looks as if they are standing up in that field as opposed to being part of it. And so I mean, it was already separated. I just added mPuppet to my banker and to my farmer, and I got to work. So you can see here, as you add mPuppet, you can add different points. So I've got these two handles here anchoring his feet down. I've got one at his knee. I've got one at his hip, his elbow, his shoulder, his head. I really wanted to anchor it down so that as we did this animation, he's not moving so much as the farmer. I really wanted people to pay more attention to the farmer. And so his is very subtle, but he's essentially just pulling this crop of peanuts like essentially just confirming and agreeing with the farmer that, hey, we have peanuts here. And then on the farmer, I added a few more, but really a lot of that comes into play. I had to anchor his tool, his hoe down right here.
Right.
When you see his hands, his arms are moving up. We've got a point at his elbow, at his neck, and at his head, and then he begins to look up at the farmer almost in disbelief. A little bit of backstory as to why this is such an important moment in time. We had a horrible issue in Alabama with the cotton industry being almost completely wiped out by an insect called the boll weevil. And so this farmer just destroyed all of his cotton crops and went out completely on a limb and said, I think we can grow peanuts. And he had this banker invest in him, and it worked. And it literally changed everything for the state of Alabama from an agricultural standpoint. And
Wow.
so mPuppet helped bring the emotion out that I wanted in a very subtle way. It is very subtle, but it's impactful, and it works because we have dialogue speaking, of course, with this shot, explaining that that's what's happening. And so you really begin to feel the emotion that farmer is like, holy cow, this worked. And so that's what we were going for, man. And this is one of dozens of images that we are animating for this documentary, and I couldn't be more happy. Not only that mPuppet came out, but how easy it is to do this in motion. Once you understand how these cameras work, it's really like, it's pretty simple. A lot of times I'll use I just go down here and I get my scene set how I want it, and then I click this record all button. I put my camera at the beginning, set it where I want it, then put it at the end of the timeline, change it where I want it to land, and that's it. It's all very subtle.
I thought this was a great use of mPuppet. Would love to know your thoughts. Please post them in the comments below, and we'll see you here next week on MacBreak Studio.